Arteta! What a strike! What a screamer! Zola! And a fantastic goal! Arsenal back in it! Here's Liverpool, lines it up, finds the net. Arsenal are in front.
It's time for a mailbag podcast where I take the questions you sent in and then I reform them to fit my narrative. This is the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. My name's Elliot Smith, and you can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. Yeah, that's how the mailbag pod works. You send in these wonderful questions. I have a glance at them. I start reading them, and then I alter them so that they fit what I want to ask in my narrative. No, I'm kidding. I am going to do my best to read your questions. However, your questions, let me be honest with you. You've got big questions, and we've got big answers. But these questions, these are big ones. They're, Arteta's future and squad building and transfers. But we play Liverpool tomorrow. The football is back. The real football. The football people care about. And we have team news. And I didn't really get a lot of questions about that. So we're going to start the pod with a question about that, and then maybe one more, and then we will get into your brilliant questions that take us off into the larger questions surrounding Arsenal and football. And we do thank you for that and hope you're doing well and survived the interlull. And now you are ready for the real football to come back, and it comes back thick and fast, as we like to say. There is Liverpool at the weekend. There is Slavia Prague on Thursday, and the football just keeps happening, and the world just keeps on turning. And here to turn the world with me is Paul. You can find him on Twitter at Pause My Pants, Slow Pause.
Woohoo!
Paul, I got to say, you have kind of become known as the toothpaste guy.
Mm-hmm.
You use the toothpaste analogy liberally, which is good. You should use toothpaste liberally. Good for the teeth. I will say that I am disappointed with you that as yet you have not found us a toothpaste sponsor. Because frankly, I think that's long overdue. And I do have to question your decision to use the toothpaste analogy, because the Arscast, they used crisps or chips or whatever you want to call them. And, they tried to parlay their conversation into sponsorship by companies that would send them tasty snacks. Mm-hmm. Whereas you're going to get a sponsorship with someone that will send us toothpaste. So
look, a lot of our listeners are from England, and they still have those medieval crooked wooden teeth. So this could be gold.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, that's good. That happened. And Tim's here. You can find him on Twitter at Scoberto. Hello, Tim.
Hello there.
Hello there, indeed. And Clive's on Twitter, Clive PFC. Hello, Clive.
Hello, hello.
Amazing that we can all speak through our medieval wooden teeth and whatnot. But let's get on to the questions, my friends. And we are going to start with one about the game tomorrow. I should mention there is team news in. It looks like Smith Rowe, Saka, Willian all fit or thereabouts. Louise not fit. Xhaka is ill, and and he's going to see how he feels tomorrow. I imagine he will play because Xhaka is contractually obligated to play 90 minutes in every game we play all season. But that is unknown. James Morgan on Twitter asks, with news coming in that Smith Rowe, Saka, and Willian are all fit, who plays on the left? Got to take advantage of all that space behind Trent. Clive, how do we take advantage of all that space behind Trent?
I like Trent. I think he's actually underrated, particularly by Gareth Southgate. But let's not go there, right? Well, he's got Dyer in his squad. I think if you're going to play Liverpool, you look at their front six, and they seem to have worked out that maybe it's best to get their midfielders into midfield. You look at their front six, and you think, oh, crikey, we got a problem. We look at their back four, and you look at that right centre half slot. And I don't know who they're going to use, whether it be Kabak or Phillips. But that right slot around Trent and around Phillips, I think that's the slot we've got to go for. And I actually think for this day and this day only, not this day only, but I really got an eye for a Martinelli, funny enough. I just got a feeling for him. So I think it's very important to Liverpool. They want to press forward. And so a different type of player to press them back. And this is another day for Aubameyang. I play him at centre forward. I would just have the ability to drop it on their back four. I think that's really important. Drop it on their back four, drop it in behind. Everyone's doing the same thing. They want to press the halfway line. Drop it in behind. Get after it. Push them back and push them into areas where they're not so confident. When they're on the front foot with Fabinho in midfield, they're going to be very confident. So that's how I'd play it just for this game. I'll make it a running race back there and really push back. So Martinelli for me on this day, I think he would work perfectly.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it really is the case that Liverpool now obviously look very different than the Liverpool we faced earlier in the season and quite a bit last season. We did manage to beat them in a game where we were fairly handily outplayed towards the end of last season during Project Restart, to be fair. But Tim, I think you look at Liverpool now and you really have to question the right way to approach a game with them. And so Amir on Twitter asks, how would you approach tomorrow's game tactically, given that Liverpool are a bit of a different animal to the team we played at the start of the season? I feel like I just said that. Given their defensive frailty, is it best to really go out and attack or absorb pressure and play on the counter? Which do you favor?
I think just go out and play our game, to be honest. Liverpool actually haven't beaten us at the Emirates since, I think, 2016 when they beat us 4-3 on the opening day. So even when Liverpool were themselves, we still gave them a good game. I accept that the home game last season, they'd already won the league and they were in their flip-flops. But nevertheless, I don't think that we've seen much this season to suggest they're levels and levels above that. So we pretty much always give them a good game at home. I wouldn't, when I say I wouldn't worry too much about it, I'm not talking about going absolute gung-ho, but I wouldn't sit back and try and absorb pressure per se. I think we tried to do that a bit in the away game at Liverpool, and I think certainly in hindsight that was a mistake, and I understand it because at that point we didn't have as much evidence about Liverpool not being as hot this season. It was early in the season, and I don't think Van Dijk had been injured yet at that point, to be fair. But I honestly, I'd just go out and play them like we usually play at home. To be fair, like we did against Manchester United and Chelsea, and try and get on the front foot. And I completely agree with James's question about getting in behind Trent. That is where the space is, and I think someone like Emile Smith-Rowe is who I'd play, just because of that way he kind of comes inside to that half space and gives the right back a choice between following him and abandoning his post, or else staying where he is and leaving Smith-Rowe free. So I quite like the idea of that. There again, it's Smith-Rowe's hip that's troubling him, and that does worry me as well, because that hip has been troubling him for a couple of years now. So
that's why I left him. That's why I left him out, Tim, because I thought I was just assuming that him and Saka won't play in this game. But that's why I sprung up Martinelli surprise. So.
Yeah. I'd definitely be up for that. I never need an excuse to see Martinelli in the starting lineup. So I honestly I wouldn't think it's Liverpool, how do we do this different? I'd just go out and play them, particularly like we play at home, and I think we'll give them a good game.
They definitely were playing a high line earlier this season. I have to admit to not seeing as much of them just so recently to know if they've stuck with that, but they were playing a very high line, and I would think that given the challenges, to say the least, that they have in central defense and the positioning of their defensive line, this is a game for Aubameyang to just keep those center backs nervous and running and on their heels, right? And
that's where Louise is a big miss as well, actually.
We're going to get into that. Yep, definitely. Clive, it sounded like you wanted to come back on that for a sec. Yep.
Yeah, just only because I have seen a little bit of them. What they are doing, actually, is they are keeping one of the fullbacks back, and they're using Trent on the right-hand side as a deep progressor and long passes from that slot, but much closer to the right centre-half. Because I recognise that he's inexperienced. They're trying to keep people there rather than leaving them 2-on-2, which Gomez and Van Dijk would do, obviously. So I think both fullbacks are weak, actually. I think Andy Robertson's having a terrible time. It's been hidden. And I think he looks exhausted. Excuse me, he's one of the players that hasn't really had a rest. So they're sort of playing with a 3. They're doing a 3-2-5 thing. And Trent's the one that's sort of hanging back.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, I think if Smith-Rowe is not fit to start, we could see something that you guys know I hate, which is Lacazette up front and Aubameyang on the left. It, to be fair, worked as we came back from a 3-goal deficit against West Ham. And if Aubameyang is attacking the space behind Trent and running off the shoulder of a center back into the space vacated by a fullback, that could work for him. Then you have the question of who starts on the right. And if Saka's not totally fit, I am absolutely all for seeing Pepe get a start. I think he's overdue for one. I have a hard.
Willian's playing, don't we?
Well, that's the thing. What I was going to say is,
that's my lineup.
Yeah, well, we have to know where Willian starts. We have to find a place for him. Maybe at center back, and we'll get to that momentarily. But I would love to see Aubameyang up front with Pepe and Martinelli on either side, or if I have to, Willian and Pepe on either side. I think we will probably see Lacazette up front with Willian with Aubameyang on the left. And maybe Willian starts on the right because I just think he's not contractually allowed to start Pepe, although I would prefer to see it. It's kind of interesting. I mean, Paul, I'll let you speak on that momentarily, and then we'll get to the center back question. But like, it is a really interesting 2-game run here in terms of divining Arteta's player preference. Because if Smith Rowe can't quite start and Saka can't quite start, or he wants to be careful, we're going to really get a sense of what he perceives to be his next best set of solutions and where Pepe and Martinelli are in the pecking order vis-a-vis options like Aubameyang wide and Willian starting. So how do you see that shaking out?
I think it's really interesting. I'd just like to add a bit to the it's a different Liverpool. This could be kind of a third Liverpool, as we've alluded to, with Fabinho back in midfield. They've only shipped 2 goals in their last 5 games. So although there's opportunity and vulnerability at the back, they've mostly shored it up with Fabinho in midfield with Wijnaldum, Thiago as the midfield.
It's not where I thought you were going with that, Paul, because with your accent, it almost sounded like you said this might be a turd Liverpool, and I was kind of hoping that was the case, but that wasn't where you were going.
Now that's culturalist, and I'm offended for the third time.
For the third time. You're offended. It's just to say nothing of the people with the wooden medieval teeth, of course. But yes, go on, please.
Oh, yeah, I started it. Never mind. So look, I actually think Willian-Tierney combo over on the left will be very interesting, but I just don't think we'll end up playing. I think we're going to play Lacazette. A, we're down on attackers. B, he's in form. I went back and had a look at some of the last game we played against them and early in the year, and Lacazette had loads of chances. Even with the high line, you may not think of him as the guy. And then we think about runners in behind. There's different ways of doing it. And him, Pepe, Odegaard, Partey behind him. It'll be interesting to see who we play on the right wing, if we stick with Chambers or maybe want a solid defender there who can also get forward. Maybe it's Cedric's game this time and he puts in a good cross. But there are other ways to get in behind using Lacazette. In fact, he's pretty good at setting off whoever on the right, and him and Pepe combined well in the last game against West Ham, even if it was only for 15, 20 minutes. It was still critical to how we got our next goal, and he only had a few touches, but everything he did looked lightning. So it could be using Lacazette as part of that quadrangle over on the right that does third man runs, quick zipping it around, or gets Odegaard loose through their back line. And then on the left have Aubameyang going after Trent Alexander-Arnold. So I think it's really hard to pick a lineup. I liked Clive's take. I liked Tim's take. I think we've no idea. Well, I think I've no idea how we'll line up, but I think Lacazette might be hard to drop right now in terms of creating goals, and it still gives us the rationale. We used Aubameyang on the right against West Ham to get in behind Cresswell, I believe, and it applies just as well on the left, I think. So, especially with Tierney going past on the left to give Alexander-Arnold a real choice. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. Look, Liverpool's defense, I was kind of looking at the underlying numbers, their expected goals, and it's sort of been consistent throughout the season. The interesting thing is, all of last season, their expected goals against was 40, which, there were plenty of teams. Well, I say plenty. There were teams better than them. Wolves was better. Wolves were better. Chelsea were better. Manchester United were better. Manchester City were better. 40 expected goals. I mean, still look not bad at all, and only allowed 33 goals. So, it sort of tells you how you win a league. You win a league running hot, obviously. But you look at them this season, and they're already at 35.5 expected goals conceded and 36 goals conceded total. So they're already 3 beyond last season. And if you just sort the league by the expected goals conceded, they're actually just behind Arsenal with their 35.5 conceded and pretty solidly mid-table. So it would seem to me that they are a team that you can attack there because they're still second in expected goals scored behind only Manchester City and a pretty solid second ahead of Chelsea. So, to me, it still strikes me as maybe it's a throwback fixture. We all remember 4-4, Arshavin, with the Hall. This is a game, a fixture that used to have a ton of goals in it, and it wouldn't surprise me if maybe it has a bit of the fireworks tomorrow, but some of that just depends on who's fit and how the teams approach it. They have Real Madrid on Tuesday. We have Slavia Prague on Thursday, so maybe that's the edge we need. Before we move on to some of the bigger questions, Clive, let's get right on the money from the Discord, who asks a question that winds up becoming very relevant to tomorrow. If you had to pick a steady preferred center back partnership for the rest of the season, who would it be? And how do you think about Luiz given his contract? I ask this knowing that we will not have Luiz tomorrow. So what's the partnership you expect tomorrow? And then is that the partnership you would like to see the rest of the season? Or how do you think that should shake out?
Yeah, I think, obviously, with my wonderful analysis, I think Holding will play on the right centre-back side tomorrow. And I'm a fan of Gabriel, so my brain says that straight away. I think I've also been encouraged about Pablo Mari in almost every single game he played, apart from the last one. I mean, it's the only time I've seen him make a few sort of shaky sort of mistakes. And so, yeah, it's the only time. Every game he's played, I felt he's been fine. I mean, really been massively influential.
But he and Gabriel both play on the left, right? Like, have we seen either of them play on the right of a two?
I've seen Gabriel go over in game,
right? But he hasn't started
5 minutes. He might even be in West Ham. Funny enough, no, it wasn't West Ham. It was a game recently where he just flipped over for a few minutes, and I was watching to see if he was going to flip back, and he did after about 3-4 minutes. So just an in-game thing. Yeah. I think, then
there was the City game recently, obviously a crucial game for Arteta where he played Holding and Marie, and I assume both of those have not been away for international duty, so he's had them for a good week to play with, Clive.
Yeah, he could do, and Gabriel's been sitting at home as well, so I think that's... I'm slightly biased on this one because I think Gabriel's a fantastic player, and I accept his mistakes. I accept everything for him because the way he defends, he doesn't just defend the ball in the air. I mean, what he did to Harry Kane tells you his levels. I mean, he absolutely bullied him. He bullied him everywhere you want. Upstairs, he went around the sides. When Harry Kane tried to get contact with him, he knows when to sort of touch him and then drop away, and then win the ball in the air. He was perfect in that game. Perfect way he defended a very good, smart player who's got weight to him, and he wasn't moved in anything. Yeah. He wasn't moved in any way, So so I have a liking for that player, and I know he's been shaky on occasions. I know he can sometimes almost over-defend. Do you know what I mean? Like go chasing and over-defend. And I recognise that, and people critique him, and that's absolutely fine. But me, Elliot, I look for the next day. You know what I mean? I think, you're on your way, mate. You're on your way. And when you arrive, it's over for everybody, So I think, and I do think Holding's had a good sit down since he signed that contract. Not sure what he did when he signed a contract and stick two fingers up at the manager. I'm not too sure what he did. but he was doing fine. I think for him to really progress at Arsenal, I think he's got to work on his longer distribution. And I think he's a fine player, good attitude, good character. For me, it's Luiz and Gabriel's my number one. But hopefully Holding will play in this game and show people he's not dead.
So you would have Luiz and Gabriel as your number one, though?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, sorry, I hope I made that clear. I think you need a low block defender and a tight defender, which I think Gabriel is. You need a possession defender, which I think Luiz is. I don't think Holding quite is that. I think he's a low block defender on the right-hand side. And I think Marie plays that possession-y type game. That's the combination that you have. And I'm looking forward to Saliba, who I think is going to be our possession defender on the right-hand side as he develops. I know I've taken a lot of projection there because we don't know if he's even going to be sold in the summer. But if he comes back, he's going to be a possession defender. If you watch his videos, it's all about his carries, all about his dribbles, all about his distributions, regaining possession, keeping it. That's what he is, and that's why the combination of him and Gabriel is very exciting on paper.
Yeah, all right. Well, Tim, let's finish up with the game then, just on this, and it's kind of backtracking, but I want to get your thoughts on it. Dipsy in the Discord, that's not the name. The name is Dipsy, but it's from the Discord. Says, if Smith Rowe and Saka aren't fit to start tomorrow, now we know they're potentially fit to start, but let's say they don't play. And presumably Pepe plays on the right, which I'm not sure we can presume. What do you do on the left? Would you do Oba with Laka up front or Willian with Oba up front? Strange how Martinelli doesn't come into realistic consideration. I mean, do you have, what's your preference?
Yeah, Martinelli would be my preference for a lot of the reasons Clive outlined. I don't think that will happen, though. So why don't I give the more interesting answer, which is what do I think Mikel Arteta will do? I think he'll play Willian. I do think he'll play Aubameyang up front. Or in fact, I wouldn't be that surprised if he sat Aubameyang down and played Lacazette up front. But I don't think both those players will start. I think he'll play Willian off the left, which for me is probably the worst choice, not just because because
he's the worst player for starters,
but it's just. I mean, my absolute preference would be Smith Rowe, just as someone to move off that wing and try and make Trent Alexander-Arnold think. And I don't think he's really a natural defender, and I think it opens up the space potentially for Tierney. But I think it will be Willian.
If it's Lacazette and Willian, all of the goodwill I've banked with Arteta is going to go out the window, because someone's got to run at that Liverpool back line, for God's sakes. Someone's got to run in behind. And I know Willian in theory can do that, but he doesn't have the burst. This is an Aubameyang game. Whether you want to play him from the left or from the center, I realize people are down on his attitude and his form, whatever the heck the narrative is at the moment. This game is made for him. He's the kind of player who can torment Liverpool, and I think he needs to. So we'll see. I want to move on from this, but just real quick, Tim, do you have an expectation for tomorrow prediction?
I think it's going to be 1-1. I do think it's going to be a draw. Maybe you're right, Elliot, and it'll be slightly more high scoring than that, 2-2 or something like that. But I think this is going to be a really tight game. Actually, I think it's going to be it's going to be one of those good game for the neutral type things. I think the interesting dynamic in this game is that for both teams, this is not the most important game of their week.
But seriously, for Liverpool, like Tuesday against Madrid is different than Thursday against Slavia Prague. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I do think that fits with Liverpool's ambitions in terms of the fact that they've got history in the Champions League. They know how to win that competition. They know they can. And I think they might be I'm not sure I'd say more motivated. Yeah, maybe more motivated to go for that. Because if you're a footballer, right, and they've got a load of 29, 30-year-old players who are playing in this great team that is, probably on its last legs, figuratively speaking, what are you going to go for? Fourth place or the big shiny Champions League trophy? If you're Salah, Mane, Firmino, I know which one I'm going for.
Yeah.
Our players should just spend the whole game running around beside Liverpool players, ask them how they see the game going next week against Madrid in the quiet moments.
Just little things like, hey, I'm about to sprint here, buddy, and I don't want you to pull your hamstring, so maybe just try to play the offside line instead of running with me.
I think if you ask John Henry, for example, he might kind of take the view that, we won the Champions League recently, need that fourth place to definitely get back in it next year and keep generating the revenue. Whereas if you're a player, if you're a 30-year-old Liverpool player at the moment, which a lot of their players are, you can say, fuck off, I want the Champions League. Well,
it's funny you should say 30. That. Did you listen to the latest Arscast that you were literally on? Yeah. But you weren't on the section I'm thinking of, which is it Neil from the Anfield Rap? Is that who I'm thinking of? He actually made a very similar argument that for these players, they've just won the Champions League. They've won the title. Fighting for top four is a hard ambition to motivate for with the kinds of things they've just achieved. But going and trying to win big ears one more time, that's something they can get up for. Yeah. So,
and they've actually got some bit like I think they're playing us, Man United and Chelsea in their run-in. So it's not like winning the Champions League is probably not that much more difficult for them than doing everything they need to do to get in the top four.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move off from this game. Should be an interesting one. By the way, Tim, is there anything more classic than an 8 p.m. Saturday kickoff?
Absolutely not. But do you know what? I actually, even if I was able to go, I wouldn't mind that. I love Friday night games. I wish there were more Friday night games. And Saturday night would be kind of fine with me.
A whiff of the Classico about it, that kickoff time. So
yeah. And what a lot of people don't realise is if it's Saturday 5:30, it might as well be Saturday 8 o'clock because we still have a pretty Victorian timetable for trains in this country. So 5:30 away at Liverpool, you cannot get a train back. The last train from Liverpool to London is 7 p.m. on a Saturday, which is pathetic, but that's the truth.
Well, let me tell you about trains here. Well, let's see if you still feel as bullish on the kickoff time when I'm pinging you at 10 p.m. for the Instant Reaction podcast, and see if you're still feeling as bullish about the kickoff time then. Okay, let's get on to the important stuff, Paul. You ready?
Yeah. Yep.
Matt on Twitter asks, and I should give people's Twitter handles, to be fair. So he's at the Matty Myth, or the Matt Myth, the Matt Myth. So maybe his name is not Matt because it's a myth. Who knows? Hypothetical one for you. The Cronkies go mad and sign Lionel Messi this summer. No other transfers in or out are completed. Where do we finish in 21-22? I love this question, by the way. I think this is my favorite question we got.
Okay, so we only make one signing.
And it's Lionel Messi.
And this
from Barcelona, if you're not. I know you don't necessarily follow the whole global game, but he's from Barcelona.
No, I've heard of him. Yeah, exactly. So you're saying this bastard comes in and kills Odegaard's minutes?
Stop stealing Clive's chat.
That was
content,
my line.
For God's sake.
He stole my lineup. Now he's stealing my punchlines. Look, I don't know. I mean,
would you start ahead of Willian?
Look, I'm all fired up to give you a case why Willian on the left ain't so bad, but I'm holding back. Yeah, it'd be fun. I mean, I don't know if he scored like 55. He owes us 55 goals. He does it for Barcelona every year. Then we just need to find a couple more from the other lads. It'd be grand. I mean, would we finish? Where would we finish? Would it even be good? Would we get worse? Yeah, would it change us that much?
Yeah.
In the end, I mean,
yeah, he's the best player to ever play football. Yes, that changes your team a little bit.
Next year, yeah, I know. But next year, would he do enough at Arsenal? Would we have enough around him to move us hugely? I mean, you got to think.
What's he good for? Goals and assists. What's he good for? If he, let's say he plays 30 starts in the Premier League.
Yeah. See, the problem is we're already a top 4 teamish. We're probably top 4 or 5.
Says the club in ninth.
Yeah. Look, I'm looking at the true table, as I call it, which starts December 26th.
Boxing Day, yeah.
And so the question is, would he get us into 3rd, 2nd, or 1st? Probably. He's going to move us up. We're not going to win. But, you know, we'd be top 4, I think. Because we're maybe just there or just under it at the moment. So we get top 4, top 3. Only Arsenal will get Lionel Messi to get back to being a top 4 club. But it would take some adjusting. On the other hand, if you're replacing Odegaard, who, look, he's been great and done plenty of everything, but you're not relying on Odegaard for defence. You're not relying on him to do all sorts of other things. So in that kind of a setup, it's all pluses, and I mean, it'd be tremendously fun and funny, and we'd have him for a year or two. But
what's he going to get? I think 18 goals, 15 assists.
Yeah, easy.
Probably in that range. Yeah. In that range. Yeah. I mean, I think we're 2nd or 3rd, and I think we win the Europa League if we're still in it. Yeah. I just don't think people really appreciate. I was about to say I don't think people appreciate how good Lionel Messi is, which sounds ridiculous when you say it that way. But I mean, I think, look, age curves are my thing.
Yes.
It's possible that he could hit that cliff, of course. This gives me a chance, though, to just point out that at 22 years old, Cesc Fabregas scored 19 goals and had 15 assists in 34 starts. For Arsenal. Yeah. Unbelievable. Okay.
Just to clarify, it depends on which Lionel Messi is around next year. Like, if you ask me, getting Lionel Messi 2-3 years ago, then we're off to win the league.
Yeah, you win the league.
Maybe not the first year, but by the second year, you're winning the league.
It's tough with City because City have so much talent and the best coach, and but whatever. Yeah, you win the league with Lionel Messi. Okay. So, Clive, you ready? Yeah, good. Okay. I'll take that as a yes. You ready? Yep. Okay. Yep. This one comes, another one from Twitter we're going to do, comes from Oh boy, the pronunciations are not my thing, as you know. Arsblog, Arsblog.
Oh yeah, I saw that one earlier.
If we fall short of European football for next season, and assuming there's not going to be a change in the manager, technical director, what could they do in the summer that would convince you they can improve the trajectory for next season? And is it signing Lionel Messi? No, that last bit is not his question. What could they do in the summer that would convince you they can improve the trajectory for next season?
So is he saying we're out of Europe completely next year?
We're out of Europe, completely out of Europe, and there's no change behind the scenes. What could they do to convince you they can improve the trajectory for next season? That is from Arteta blog.
Because if we don't win Europa League, I'm all right with us being out of Europe. I know people that don't like that answer, but I think we need to reset. I think we need to absolutely focus and reset on our league performance and consistency. So we've got players to sell. I don't think the job changes. I really don't think the job changes. I think contractually and where people are in their development curve, things like Maitland-Niles, for example, the players on loan, I think the next steps are obvious. The only challenge I see is, can we do all the work? And every club you seem to look at has got a similar amount of players they want to sell, because we really froze. We really froze last summer. There wasn't that much movement. So all these players are now collating. All the dust is around them all in every single club. And they've all got ideas to sell 5 and buy 1, big one. Do you know what I mean? But can you sell? And can you sell at the right price? And you really are selling to each other because there's no market anywhere else. So I think the challenge is going to be getting people out the door, get people out the door appropriately at the right price. Then your ability to rebuild is easier to buy than sell, because everyone wants to be here, because all the other leagues are unstable financially. The most stable league to guarantee your money going forward is the Premier League. And so buying isn't a problem, it's selling is going to be the problem at the right price. And when people, and I'm one of them, when I see 8 or 9 go out the door and 4 or 5 that I really like, I'm convinced. And until I see them play, I'm absolutely convinced, and then we see them play, we think, crikey, what's he like, and so I think just the general movement, where we're heading on churn, I think the churn is the key thing. I think January was really important for the churn we did in January, even though it wasn't massively cost effective. It's important for squad harmony, and results since Christmas have proven it so, and we do it again in the summer. And that's what I want to see more than anything. More than anything, I want to see a recognition of what an Arsenal player used to be versus what an Arsenal player is going to be. And I hope that the talent identification of Edu and Arteta and all the recruitment people matches up to my expectations, really. And that is the number one key thing. And Europe, for me, is a bonus. Champions League would be everything. It absolutely would be everything. Europa League, I can honestly take it or leave it, because the more important things for me are the recruitment strategy.
Yeah. You know what I would say, Clive? I think you're spot on. And for me, look, I already think the trajectory is starting to look like what we want it to look like from a footballing standpoint. For them to convince me that they've got the club under control from a technical standpoint, off the pitch, it's about decisiveness this summer that proves a change of philosophy from this win now short-term mortgage the future approach, and attempts to unwind that strategy and clearly move to a more sophisticated long-term and sustainable strategy, right? So decisively moving on younger players that don't have a future at the club to cash in and get the money to reinvest, not buying Sergio Aguero, right? Not paying big money to aging players. Can you get some expensive players off the books? Can you move on a Willian, for example, and just, eat a loss there? Is there a way you can unwind some of the commitment to overage players? Can you generate revenue from the younger players that aren't going to make it, and then bring in players that are at the right age, the right profile for the team to move forward? That would be a big thing for me. Tim, insert name. So I will call him Turd Ferguson. Turd Ferguson on the Discord asks, it's insert name, so I assume I'm supposed to do it. So Turd Ferguson. By the way, if you're saying, where's that come from? The quite hilarious Jeopardy sketches from Saturday Night Live. You can look them up. It's what the Burt Reynolds actor who is actually, why can't I think of his name right now? The guy playing Burt Reynolds calls himself Turd Ferguson, says it's funny, and then Alex Trebek says it's not funny. Anyway, that's an oral history of the Jeopardy sketch on Saturday Night Live. Tim, given the best and worst scenario ending for this season, what is the minimum we should expect from the Arteta project for next season? Best scenarios, we win the Europa League. Worst case scenarios, we finish below Europa League in qualification places. What is the minimum we should expect from the Arteta project? And I love this question because there has been a lot of patience. At some point, that's going to run out, you would think, if we don't start meeting minimum expectations. So what should those minimum expectations be, and that we actually start holding him and the club to?
Yeah, sure. So next season, comfortably in the top 6 and at least challenging for the top 4, and in that conversation to the end of the season. That's where I think we really should be, and we've under-delivered on that this season. So that's certainly, and then with the cups, it's the cups are a bit more of a lottery, I guess. If we're in the Europa League, I would expect us to compete to win that again and get to at least the semi-finals. And obviously it would depend on who knocked us out and when, really. But I would not expect to go out to someone like Olympiacos in the Europa League. If we're in the Champions League, getting out of the group stage and into the knockouts, again, minimum expectation. So, yeah, definitely from a league standpoint, like not having... Like the top 6 shouldn't really be in question, or it shouldn't be. I say it shouldn't be in question. Like we should be in there. Do you know what I mean? Like I guess a bit like Leicester are at the moment. Like that's what I'd expect for us to be on pace to do that at least all season, and not be hanging around in 9th or 10th and hoping to get in. So like relatively speaking, setting some pace. 6 being pretty much in the bank, and 4th being very much in our sightlines. I think that's where we should be.
I think that's right. Yeah, and I mean, we're going to continually have the conversation of process versus results. But as much as I love, just absolutely going off the deep end, emphasizing process at the expense of results, at some point the results have to be there. At some point, you have to set a hard line. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Indeed, because why do you look at process? Because you believe in the long term that's where the results are. So that's why you look at things like XG, for example, because what XG tells you is, well, actually, if we keep doing this, eventually this will happen. So yeah, exactly. The reason you look at process as well as results is because you believe that the process will bring the results.
Yeah, it's a really good point, right? If you're fully process oriented, but it never brings the results you're expecting, then you've evaluated the process wrong. Yeah, then it is a bad process. That's exactly right. So yeah, I think that's an interesting point, which then leads to the next question, which Twins in France asks, and I wonder, is this from both of them, or is just one of them asking?
Les
They
jumeaux.
are at Twins in France. Les deux en France. I don't know what twins is in France, so I just went with the 2. But it's un de les deux. I don't know. You know what? Let's not do that. Pretend that didn't happen. So anyway, there is a question here. Paul, over under how long Arteta stays with Arsenal after this season? He sets it at 2.5 seasons. So over or under 2.5 more seasons from Arteta at Arsenal?
I think that's about right. I'd say 5 seasons in total.
So you think over?
Yeah, could be 6.
Just. Interesting.
Yeah, could be 6 rather than 4. I can't see 4.
Let's do a quick whip around then. Clive, 2.5 more seasons. Over that or under that from Arteta after this season?
2.5, just over. For me, he's always a 3 to 5 year manager. That's what he was, and it's all dependent on the Champions League.
Tim?
Yeah, I think it's going to be about 2.5 years. That's the thing. So it's difficult for me to go over or under, because I don't think it'll be less than 2, but I don't think it'll be more than 3, if that makes sense. So, and that will be governed by, where we are at the time. I'll say over, and that I'm going to say that's positive, because if it's over, I think that means that Arsenal are on the right track.
Yeah, I think I think it's interesting, right? Because what it proves, if we all feel it's right around that number, it proves why the whole be patient thing is a little silly. Because you're not talking about be patient and then he'll be here 20 seasons. You're talking about be patient and get another 2 seasons out of him, right? So like again, I think it is right to stick with him, of course, and I think it is right that he'll probably stick around another 3 seasons roughly. But that shows you why moving on from managers quickly isn't the end of the world, because even if they're successful with you, they're probably going to move on relatively quickly. So an interesting one. Here's one addressed to me from Sean Fitzgerald at Sean's Gone Wild. I have the video, by the way, Sean, and it is sensational content.
Loving the twins.
Yeah, this one is the twins in France. This is one for me. How does it feel to have a cameo in the Pixar movie Up? You have been silent on this topic for far too long. My 2 worlds, having a 2-year-old and Arsenal, collided when mindlessly watching Disney Plus with him one day. Haha. Sean, it feels great to have a cameo in Pixar movie Up for one reason. To be a part of enduring and beloved content is something I always wanted for myself, and that cameo gave me that, and no other thing will ever give me that. So that made me feel good. But I hope you're enjoying the podcast. Okay, we've got a lot more questions and a lot of really good ones that I'm kind of excited to get into, and they get increasingly difficult. But no Manscaped today, although we hope you love Manscaped and will patronize them with all of your private cleaning and shaving needs. But we do have to follow the orders of our podcast daddy. So podcast daddy insists we take a break here and tell you about something. We're going to do that. We'll take a short break. We'll come back with more of your questions after this. Stay with us. Hey everyone, before we get started, I want to tell you about Blue Wire Hustle, a brand new program where you can host your very own podcast here at Blue Wire. Hustle was created to give everyone the opportunity to take your podcast to the next level. Or, if you want to host a podcast and just don't know where to start, Hustle is the perfect place for you. As part of the program, you'll receive personal cover art, Q&As with Blue Wire's top podcasters, access to our community Discord, and an e-learning course full of tips and tricks. And on top of that, we'll help you get your show pushed out to Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, and all other listening platforms. And the best part is, you can get all of this for only $15 a month. That's the same rate as any other hosting site would charge you just for the initial setup. So whether you're starting from scratch or have an existing show that you want to grow, Hustle is an open door to leveling up your sports podcasting experience. Acceptance into the program is limited, so get your application in today. To apply, go to bwhustle.com/join. bwhustle.com/join. Check out the description box for this episode to find out more, but that's bwhustle.com/join. Okay, we're back. Hope you enjoyed that. And more questions. And Clive will dive right in with a difficult one. This comes from Alex Cortez on Twitter at JACortez91. And to be fair, this almost exact question, to the extent that it makes me wonder if they are indeed the same people, because on Discord, from DNA ID 0098, so maybe that is the DNA code of Alex Cortez, you never know. Clive, DNA wants to know, what do we do about Lucas Torreira? And Alex Cortez wants to know, how do you deal with the Torreira situation? You can answer either question.
Oh, wow. I mean,
they are the same, after all.
That's the human side of it. I mean, you know, if you follow Torreira on Instagram or anything like that, he's very, very close to his mother.
Extreme
very close.
Yes.
You know, the whole family bond is huge. He just hits you in the face, and so, you know, when I heard that, I thought, wow, that's going to absolutely devastate him, and it seems to have done. And I heard some stuff on video today, and Charles Watts did a very good video about this, and he sort of was speaking about it, saying, you know, he's a very emotional guy. You know, even back to the Europa League final, you know, he was very much broken. In the FA Cup final, I don't think he played in, you know, and he was very emotional when we won that. It's like, you know, this is going to really, really, really hurt him. And I'm not sure what we're going to have afterwards. I think he seems to have taken his mind. He wants to go away and play for Boca. So, and when you read the quotes, you think, oh, we've got to let him, you know. But he's an asset, and we can't. He's £20 million to us, you know. And Boca haven't got that sort of money floating in their back pocket. I mean, Tim will know more than me, but they haven't got. The last time I read or heard, they've got like £10 million record signing. So can we afford to make it happen? So maybe it might be a loan, because he's got 2 years to go in his contract. I'm generally not sure. Naturally, where we are right now, it's a human situation, and the human part of it is just so heartbreaking. As for so many people that have lost people way sooner than they should have done during this pandemic. So at the moment, mate, it's just a sad situation, and
here comes
I'm
Paul
not sure. Yeah. I just think it's going to be a sensitive one for us to manage, and I'm generally not sure how we're going to do it. Apart from at this moment in time, I almost hope he gets his wish. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I almost hope he gets his wish, because there's more to life.
He wants to go to Boca, right? To Boca Juniors, and they're not going to have the money to pay the kind of transfer fee, at least presumably, that a European club might. But if you have an emotionally damaged player, understandably, going through one of the hardest things a human being deals with in life, which is the loss of a parent, and the loss of a parent way too young, I think in her early 50s, 53 maybe, tragic. You're not going to get a huge transfer fee for a player that has struggled to assimilate to, and get integrated into certainly English life. He's not going to go stay in England, maybe Italy, maybe Spain, but he's hurting. He wants to go to Boca. What is someone going to pay for a player like that? And to be fair, on the footballing side, a player who hasn't exactly lit the world on fire, clearly has qualities, clearly could be helpful to us or helpful to another club, but under the emotional situation, a question of what you would get from him. I think it's really just a question of, can Boca come up with something that makes sense? You can't just, as much as you want to be the good human being and say, you can just go. I don't think you can do that. You can't do that. I mean, I understand why you can't do that. But if Boca can come up with something of value, it may prove to be the best offer we have, and it may just make the most sense.
Like a Pepe deal, Elliot. You know what I mean? Like paying installments over 3-4 years.
Yeah.
It's got to be something like that. But at this moment in time, it's the human side. It's just heartbreaking. I can't see beyond it, actually.
Yeah. I mean, it's... What can you expect of a player who's just mentally distraught? And how do you make a decision that helps that player heal, but also takes into account the fact that millions of dollars have been spent to acquire his services, and millions of pounds are paid? I don't even know if Boca could take on his contract. So that, that's another issue. So, and admittedly, I may be vastly underestimating the resource capabilities of Boca Juniors, but the most important thing is that Torreira is okay, and I hope he is. And it's a shame, because I think it's not out of the realm of possibility that he could have been a useful player for us next season, given some potential clearouts. But it is what it is. It's a really tricky one, and I think you've described it beautifully. And the only reason I referenced Paul is when you said it's a sad situation. I assumed that we would get the
Paul. Sad situation.
Yep, that's the one.
Can I say something that's going to sound harsh, though?
I expect it, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think we're letting ourselves off the hook if we say, and what would he be worth anyway? Because, he's going to be worth a lot more if he stays in Europe. And
even if it's 15 million, that's more than 1.5 million or so. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I didn't look. I'm going to say it in the harsh. Look, on the personal level, it's very, very difficult. And being away from family when you lose a parent, which has happened to me twice, unfortunately, and I would have loved to have moved countries back to my family and wasn't able to. So I kind of know what going through it feels like. Maybe his situation is different. Maybe he was a little younger than I was. Maybe he's kind of emotionally much more entwined with his family. But still, he knows when he took out this 5-year contract with Arsenal to get paid 4 million a year, that it's a commitment for 5 years. And we paid Sampdoria 25 million. And, he has no way to go back to Sampdoria and say, how would you like to chip in here with the money they took for the contract? He'll still basically be getting paid 3 million. I didn't see anything in his statement saying he was willing to give up his wages. As I said, I'm going to give the harsh version of it because, there's just some basics here. He could decide not to play for Uruguay in the national tournaments, giving himself 2 months a year back in his home country. He could set up the world's best 24/7 video conferencing tunnel back to Uruguay to his family so he could talk to them all the time. He's been able to take care of his family in a way he never possibly could have without the Arsenal money to this point. And we're a club at the moment who just doesn't have 15 plus his wages to throw away for 2 years in this situation. So I think we should make all the accommodations in the world possible for him in terms of giving him compassionate leave, suggesting ways he doesn't play for the national team. Just find time for him to spend time back there, especially right now. But I don't we can't hold the club to account for how they manage their finances and say, sure, what's 15 or 20 million? He's in a tough situation. He's a young man who's taken on responsibilities. It's very tough. He's I assumed banked most of the money. And that has been great for him and his family going forward. And in 2 years' time, at the end of his Arsenal contract, he can move back to Uruguay for the rest of his life. And so I don't think it's, let's say, there's a lot of pieces there and a lot to talk about. There's his personal situation, but there's also his commitments. And surely between the club and himself, they can find something where he spends a reasonable amount of time at home. But his contract with Arsenal has allowed him to take care of his family in a way that is beyond his wildest dreams.
Yeah. No, I it's awful, but we are living in a moment right now where tragedy is touching more people than even under normal circumstances, where it does so more than it should. Yeah. And everybody, it feels like, is working through some tragedy at some level and finding ways.
And life is hard. I mean, it is.
Well, it is. Period. Yeah.
Life is hard.
Yeah, no, and so look, I think you are correct that the club can't just have a policy of, if a player goes through a hardship, basically immediately exonerating them from contractual obligations and setting aside any business requirements. I do think there's a question. No, you can't. Yeah. I do think there's a question of player power here, to the sense that what happens to the fee and the desirability of the player if he just shows that he doesn't have the wherewithal to make it in Europe right now. But let's see how that plays out. It's just happened. It's fresh. Right now, the most important thing is that he gets through this period of extreme dismay and sadness and loss. And maybe when that fog lifts, he will be able to think a little bit more long-term about what's best for him and his family beyond that. So,
and I do wonder if having such a sucky time in the last couple of years, football-wise, isn't a piece of this that maybe he's finding it hard to factor in. I mean, he wasn't very happy at Arsenal by all accounts, and he's probably miserable in his current situation. That's not going to help how you see the world.
Yeah, so some players just don't acclimate. I mean, Danielson's a good example of that, a different circumstance, but it just, he couldn't get comfortable with Arsenal. Tim, Rob J at Brooklyn Gooner, but the Brooklyn is all smushed together, so it's Brooklyn, BRKL. Anyway, which player we have currently loaned out can come back and play a big role for us next season? I am adding here, you have to pick one. You cannot say none, question. Because none is eligible.
Yeah, that is a big question, and I think that most likely it might be one of the young English players, and I'm going to say Joe Willock. And the reason I'm going to say Joe Willock is because, first of all, I think Ainsley Maitland-Niles has kind of made his mind up that he wants to leave, and I think that's fine. I think that's it's fine that we part ways. Guendouzi's got 1 year on his contract, and that's not happening. Torreira's not happening. Who else is out on loan? Mavropanos. Saliba. Yeah. Do you know what? Yeah, that the reason I was going to say Willock is just because we don't have that much in midfield, and I wrote a piece yesterday just looking at the work that Arsenal have ahead of them this summer, and I think Xhaka and El Neni will both get contracts. Just because of
we're going to give El Neni a contract. there goes all my hopes and dreams.
I think so. Yeah, I think so, because they've got to replace Ceballos. They probably want to bring in like a bit of an upgrade anyway, to play alongside Partey, and with El Neni, He seems happy enough to play a squad role, won't cost the earth. Arteta seems to like him, not enough to, play him all the time, but just to play him here and there. I think he will get another contract just out of expediency, really. Whether it's like a really long contract, I'm not sure, but I can see that happening. And so I thought Willock, just because there's not an awful lot else going, or we're losing a lot of midfielders basically this summer, but also there's the homegrown rule. And if someone like Callum Chambers goes, for example, then we're in a bit of trouble on the homegrown rule, which is why I think Willock, for example, might be kept around for a year. I also think Newcastle are going to go down. I think they'll be relegated, so I don't think they will have the financial wherewithal to keep him. But now Clive's reminded me of Saliba. I actually think that's more likely, to be honest, just because, whether we give Luiz a new contract or not, you'd like to think that Saliba will come back and be part of the first team. And that doesn't necessarily mean starting on the first day of the season, but coming back into the fold, perhaps starting off with the Europa League group games and the Carabao Cup and going from there. So I think it would have to be Saliba. I still very much get the vibe that Arteta doesn't want him, and that he wants something else there. And just going, I guess, to Andrew's question about what would make you feel more confident in the club this summer, I want to see some evidence of some pushback from Edu in particular. No more of this fucking, Nketiah's too important to sell, and then not even putting him on the bench for none of that. I want some sense of evidence of Edu saying, look, are you going to play this guy? Give me yes or no. Maybe not right. He's for sale. Simple as that. I don't want any more of this messing about. I think
I have to come in here, right? Because Tim, don't you think that them two are the same person almost? They're hand in glove the same. And know the way Edu builds relationships. What's your gut telling you about that pushback?
Yeah, that it's not there, and that for me there does need to be another senior voice in the room. I think Edu and Arteta like each other, and that's great. And I think you're right. I think they probably are quite similar. But I think there has to be a little bit of friction at that level. So I want those things pushed back on. If Arteta says he doesn't want Saliba, I want Edu to say, okay, but you've got no money to buy who you want as a right centre back because we've got too much else to do. We cannot mess around when we've already invested in a guy to play here. So you're the super coach, you're the great coach, you're the next big thing. Coach him. He's 20. Coach him to do what you want him to do. And if you can't, that's an admission to me that you are underselling yourself and you don't think you're capable. That's the kind of, obviously it doesn't have to be that kind of aggressive, but do you know what I mean? I want some evidence.
I was a bit mean to him.
If there aren't a few F-bombs in there, are they really even disagreeing?
But do you know what I mean? I want some evidence of maybe a little bit of discussion about these things and not, whatever you say, Mikel, keep him on 50 grand a week, watching the game on his sofa, no problem.
The worst thing that you can do if you start up a new company with a friend is always agree with each other. It's the worst thing you can do, and I speak from experience. I had a tech startup. Me and my friend did it. We were really gung-ho about it, but there was no one in the room to tell us an idea was bad. And you need it. You need to know when your ideas are wrong, and you need someone who will push back and show you why they might be wrong. Otherwise, you fall in love with some good ideas, but some bad ideas too. And as someone who has failed at a lot of things, usually it is for lack of perspective. And the what limited things I have succeeded at in my life, I've succeeded at through having voices there to kind of guide me away from the rocks. You need that. You need a lookout.
Also in marriages, marriages without arguments are in as much trouble as marriages with terrible arguments. You need good arguing. It won't feel good at the time. It'll be a humdinger, but shit has to come out. You got to talk about stuff, and stuff. You don't really get to the real nub of something until you actually have a good humdinger of an argument.
Yeah, I mean, Paul and I can speak from experience.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, let's do this, Clive. Let's give you one that was targeted for you. Sammy at AFC Sammy 10 asks a question that was also echoed by Bad Fromance, Bad Fromance, on the Discord. Bad Fromance says, given our current squad and squad needs, would it make sense to pursue a tucked-in Chambers-style right back in the window or an attacking Hakimi right back?
Explains why he runs like that.
Yeah, because he's tucked in. Yeah, that's nope, not going there. And what Sammy asked was, what are your thoughts on Hakimi? Lots of talk about him on Twitter recently. I like him a lot going forward, but I'm unsure how good he is defensively. So what do you think of Hakimi? And style-wise, is that the need, or do we need something a little more tucked in, as Bad Fromance suggests?
Yeah, I call it all court right back. Right? But yeah, I think the Hakimi thing, I don't think we should be spending 40, 50 million on the right back. I'm going to
give you a spoiler here, Clive. We're not going to.
Yeah, I don't think we need to, so that it sells papers, right? So my view is we need more of an all-court player, and there's two that I like the look of. One I didn't know anything about 2 weeks ago, and I actually thought Chambers did a great job the other day, and I thought he understands that role really, really well. I just wish he was a yard faster. Or again, we wouldn't have to do anything. I'm very close to thinking, well, actually, I'd rather see the money invested elsewhere. Certainly, say if Hector goes, which looks like it could happen, Cedric stays. That combination isn't the worst in the world. But then by saying that, how are we going to get to the top end of the table? I don't think that's enough quality. I don't think it's enough resilience. I don't think it offers enough speed. There's a player at Real Betis called Emerson Royale. Anything about him until 2 weeks ago, he hit our headlines that we were looking at him, had a good look at him, and he's like a faster Chambers, a bit more in the Kyle Walker mode, who can play inside and out, good with his feet, raw enough for us to not have to spend too much money. And yeah, I like the look of him. He's perfect for what we're doing. A lot of people like the kid at Ajax, Maswari, his name is. Again, he's a bit more Cancelo-like, a bit lighter, a bit neat and light. I worry about his physicality a little bit, but technically superb, 2-footed, inside and out, combination play, short play, switching. I've been thinking about recently, we're doing a lot of wide diamond build-up, wide triangle build-up, and then that's going to get burned out soon. People are going to hook onto that. So our ability to switch out from that one side to the other is going to be really important. And that people work out our progression and how we progress the ball. Now we brought in Odegaard, that centrality is going to be equally important, but the ability to switch play from wide areas is going to be important. I'm afraid Hector can't do that. The evolution of this team is definitely going to be players who've got more all-court ability. So I like those two, but I did like how Chambers played, and my previous opinions on Chambers on this podcast.
Souffle. I believe the word souffle was thrown around.
As a centre-back, and for me, it was always a Eric Dyer centre-mid or a right-back, funny enough. And
so Clive, on Chambers, was the key to his success the way we kept him back so that pace defensively wasn't a problem, and he only progressed when we were right up the pitch? Like as we went into the final third, that's when he really joined the attack. Was that something a bit different to what we've done with him before? Is that why he managed to cover his ass one end and be Cafu the other end?
I'm torn a bit on this because I think something that Tim said a little while ago, which I agreed with, and I think like any player, they play like a pod, right? So they're playing in a little group, and your little pod of 3-4 players, they dictate your day. They really do, and the pod of Partey, Odegaard, and the right back. Mate, I'll be pretty good in that little pod. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and it's quite interesting how the right backs have improved since those two players have been consistently playing. But I do think timing is an issue for Hector. I think how you arrive, when you arrive, and in what shape you arrive. You can't get there too early. You've got to arrive as the ball's progressing. And Chambers understands that. Cedric understands it. And you've got to create relationships. And they both understand that really, really well.
Because I do think there was a big mistake on the cause and effect. There was when Chambers played up front in the second half, we were much better. That wasn't how it worked. When we were up front in the first half, Chambers joined it. We weren't up front because Chambers was up there.
Yeah, it's timing. I mean, Tini does it, doesn't he? When Tini goes forward, he just arrives, doesn't he? And we almost go. We all look at our TV and say, "Where is he? Oh, there he is." And he's never not there. You see what I mean? Yeah. He arrives as the ball. You're taught when the ball's on the back foot of your centre mid, you get on the line. The ball's about to get onto his back foot, and he's about to turn out to you, and you should already be on the go. That's what you're taught as a fullback. Trust me. Be on the line of the centre mid as we're progressing the play and predict and go. So you arrive into space. You're not there too early because you become marked and you block people, right? And Chambers has got it. Cedric has got it. Bellerin has got it too. It's something you can coach, but he's such a bombastic runner. He wants to run, and he just empties a little bit too soon on occasion. But I often think if Hector stays, it wouldn't bother me. It really wouldn't bother me as long as he can brush up on those type of things. Because I think it's very important to our build-up, how we, play in a cohesive way. But I'm not sure if I answered your question already. I went off on one, but you got the answer.
I
anyway.
love the answer regardless, so it really doesn't matter. I'm going to ask Paul a question, then Tim, I have an absolute layup for you, so an easy one coming your way. This one comes from Gunnar Fan on Twitter, @GunnarFan8. Paul, assuming we spend as high as last season, so one Party money signing and one Gabriel money signing, which two positions are you upgrading in our current squad? And which would get the big spending and which would get the mid spending,
Well, help me a little bit, because the first thing here you'd look at is the Odegaard thing. So
you'd have to spend on that. So if that's your big money spending, nail your colors to the mast now.
Oh, yeah, that's easy. If we could get Odegaard
for 50, yep.
Yeah.
Would you pay the 50 we paid for Party for Odegaard?
I mean, I don't know if it's exactly 50, but it's got to be in that. I mean, he's bloody good.
Can I ask you a question? Is the right thing to do give up on the league, play Odegaard in the league, and have him play like crap in the league so that he's only worth about like 25, 30, and then pay that?
Well, I think that's what we're doing with Danny Ceballos at the moment.
Touche. Okay, anyway, go ahead. Finish answering the real question. Ignore me.
So, yeah, that would be my Thomas Partey signing would be Odegaard. And then I get a Gabriel type signing somewhere. And I like pulling in Saliba. I do think they have to get their head around that one and just make that work out. I have other thoughts on what the issue is there, and I don't think I'm hopeful it's not just Arteta doesn't like him. I think there's a lot more to it than whether Arteta liked or didn't like Saliba. So we saw our centre backs. Where's
that middle money going? That 25, 30 million pound player. Who's that going to be?
Well, I think ideally, much as I like Lacazette recently and his return to form, he's a moody bugger. He's up and down like the Assyrian Empire, if you know what I mean.
I don't.
Okay. So I think we got to replace at centre forward, and I think that is important because I think Arteta is going to transition to a different kind of attacking line at some stage. Part of the reason we play the way we do is because of the two very, very expensive and dominant personalities and paychecks up front, and it would allow him to move to his new kind of striker, a younger version of whatever it is he wants to do with a 9/9.5 kind of player. Or maybe he decides he's going to build it all around our existing attack of Aubameyang, pull in Martinelli as the backup, and spend that money on the front line in a different way. I don't know if I answered the question there, but I think I'd like to center it around the center forward decision, whether he ends up getting a center forward or just a very flexible Sterling type wide player. I mean, we have certain versions of that, but I'm sure he looks at our attacking lineup and says, yeah, but I'd still like more of a Mahrez, Sterling, whatever he's looking for, Gabriel Jesus,
So I don't have a problem with that, but I slightly differ. I think, look, there are four clear areas of need in my view. Number 10, which we hope will be solved by Odegaard, or it's going to be Bundy or Aouar. You hope it's one of those types of players. A future at center forward, but I still feel that Martinelli and Pepe both have a shout for being tried in that position. And with Aubameyang under a big contract for a couple of seasons, I think that's a can that can be kicked down the road. And especially if somehow Balogun stays, because then you've got Aubameyang, Martinelli, Pepe as an option. I mean, look, if Thierry Henry could be turned into a striker, granted that's 4-4-2 type system, I still think Pepe could maybe do that. And then you have Balogun. So I think you can kick that can down the road. I think right back, Can you get through another season of Bellerin? Ideally, I think you sell him and get some money, both move on. Can you get by then with just Chambers and Cedric Suarez? So right back looks like a priority, but I just got to get a party partner. I have to. I've got to have someone better, someone more athletic and rangy and just a wider spectrum of qualities alongside Party than our current options. And so for me, the big money signing is the number 10. And then can you find not a hidden gem at 30 million or 25 million, but a less well-known but big upside kind of player who can come in and play alongside Thomas Partey for 25, 30 million, in that 23-year-old kind of range. That would be ideal in my view. So not that the question was addressed to me, but that's my answer.
Yeah, that works.
Okay. Tim, layup. You ready for it?
Go for it.
And it's not because I don't think you can handle the more sophisticated questions, by the way. It's just, So Sam, at Sam673060018. I loved that song in the 80s. 673060018. Anyway, sorry. What is your take on Vinay and Arsenal's initiative on social media abuse and hate? And if necessary, should Arsenal also disable their social media practice? What should we as Arsenal fans do to also stop social media hate and abuse?
Yeah, that's a really difficult one, and that's not a layup at all.
It was a joke. Yeah, no, it's a extremely serious, challenging, and complex topic. Yeah. Yes.
And because the thing is, there's just so many. I've kind of worked in this kind of area before, and the thing is, whichever thread you pull at, there's never a totally right answer because, look, I'm not going to tell Thierry Henry what to do about getting racial abuse online. That is absolutely not my right. There is an argument that coming off of social media lets the abusers win. But that's obviously not why he's doing it. He's doing it to push the actual social media companies to do more about it. I do think it would be incredibly powerful if Arsenal, deleted their accounts for 2 weeks or something. But then if you say you're just doing it for 2 weeks and you come back, does that really push the needle?
They have to pay me $2 million to get at Arsenal back from me.
Jesus. Gotta monetize it.
Well, but the thing is, I think it's after 30 days. Once you delete your account, you get 30 days grace, right, before it goes. So that's and look, ultimately, a lot of us are dependent on social media to some extent or other. For us, for example, in terms of growing and this podcast and everything else, social media is the biggest part of that, without doubt. Mm-hmm. So it is difficult, and it's one of those things. Like social media now is, I guess this may be a bad taste analogy, so apologies. It's kind of like coronavirus. It's here and it's not going away. Mm.
Except hopefully coronavirus is going away. But okay.
Well, I mean, it's not
right.
We can get control of it.
Fair point.
But
yep.
it's
good
not
point.
actually
so
going
it is
away.
A good analogy. Yep.
But that's the thing. Like social media is here to stay. So the answer is to try and make it a better place, right? It's not. You're not going to get everyone in the world to delete their accounts and just walk off to something else. It is a fact of life now. It is not a fad anymore. So as for what we can all do, I mean, I guess. And I guess I see this a lot on the side of with women's football as well, and I never know how to broach it really, because in my absolute rational mind I just think just ignore the people who do it. They're looking for a reaction. Don't engage with them. I was quite disappointed when the WSL TV contract was revealed, and one of the headlines. I think in The Guardian, and it wasn't that the headline is not written by the writer, was something like, one in the eye for the No One Cares Brigade. And it's just ignore the No One Cares Brigade, no one cares about them. Don't engage with it on that level. It's just, it's silly, and they will get bored and they'll go away. But obviously you can't that is not an acceptable response to things like racial abuse. You cannot tell people, I'll just ignore it and it will go away. That is not acceptable. So it's always that catch-22, between calling it out and not engaging with it. And so who knows what the answer is, really? I mean, there are a couple of things. There is more that social media companies can do. I am not a fan of the idea of IDing, because there are people who absolutely rely on anonymity for their own safety as much as anything. So, members of the trans non-binary community, victims of domestic abuse, journalists in certain territories, whistleblowers, like these people, you can't do that.
But there's that, Tim, can you clarify a little bit, because there's two-sided anonymity, right? You can be anonymous to the public, but Twitter could know who you are.
Yeah.
So if you're out there racially abusing, they know who you are.
I got to stop you. I thought that through as well. I think once anybody knows who you really are and there's a database of it, the fear of that being abused from a persecutorial standpoint, I mean, especially if you live in a country that has an oppressive regime, the idea that, don't worry, Twitter won't tell the oppressive regime who you are. Are you really going to report on the abuses of your government if Twitter's got your name, mailing address, and identification on file in that government? I take your point
about that. If you grandfather in, if everybody keeps their existing anonymous social media accounts, right? Say you have an anonymous Twitter account and you're abusive, Twitter cancels you. You take up your future account from there on in. All new accounts are ID'd. So
what about just this? You are allowed to create an anonymous account at the point at which you are flagged for abuse. If it's deemed that you were abusive, the only way you are allowed to continue having an account on the service is if you switch to a non-anonymous account. So you can start anonymous, but if you abuse that privilege, you lose that privilege and you can no longer be anonymous. Therefore, you can protect the way social media is helpful in all the ways you identified, Tim, but it is not an unlimited power to go out and just be an asshole.
Yeah. But you still, and like that is like a good suggestion, but then you still get this Pandora's box about, do you trust Twitter and Facebook with that kind of information?
I get that, but it is a very different point along the spectrum. And like loads of people would say, yes, I do actually. I just want to be anonymous. Like if you're a journalist, you'll make your own call, but you may well think, that works for me. Twitter knows who I am. I don't think that's how I'm going to get done over, but the public, blah, 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 etc. So for some people, they're going to have an issue with it. But given that we're going to have a problem one way or another, it seems like backside, identification, front side anonymity is one possibility that I'm sure, obviously, they've thought about it.
It's got to be explored because the current situation can't go on.
So untenable,
So go ahead. I'm sorry.
I also think Andrew wrote about this the other day and made a good point about like doing more to teach about this in schools, and also doing it from the point of view, because I think a lot, not all, but I think a lot of this abuse comes from like 15, 16-year-old lads who are bored. And that like the young lad that abused Ian Wright and ended up in court, and Ian was very clear when he was saying, me taking him to court was not about the individual, and so the reason I accepted his apology was because I didn't necessarily want to rip him or his future apart, but there needed to be visible consequences for this. And so like teaching kids, for example, this shit will come back at you. And actually obviously teaching them first and foremost that this is not right for these reasons. But the thing is, the thing that's really difficult, most of them know that it's wrong. They know the difference between right and wrong. That's why they're doing it, because they know it's wrong and they know it's hurtful. And so, I think there needs to be a lot more. I think there needs to be a lot more actually that's taught in schools that isn't like critical thinking. For example, I think critical thinking should be a school subject in its own right, but that's another story. So, I guess as to what we can do, I mean, calling stuff out, particularly if we see our friends or people we like, or maybe people we follow, who, it doesn't have to be abuse, but just saying things that aren't. But having those constructive conversations and kind of saying, actually, you shouldn't say that, you shouldn't talk like that, and fixing like the really fixable stuff, like that's stuff that we can do, and perhaps having those uncomfortable conversations with people around us to detoxify the general discourse.
Clive? But
this topic,
with audio,
yeah, sorry.
With Clive, it's called a pausa.
I find this topic, it's a broad topic. It's not just about what Thierry Henry did around racism. It's around hate and hateful abuse, you know, whether it be gender related, sexual related, wherever it is. It's just a societal issue we have at the moment. And football is trying to do its thing in a unified way to highlight these issues. And I think it's one of the biggest topics there actually is in the world. I honestly believe this. The world is in a very vulnerable place post the pandemic. There's lots of very vulnerable people that are struggling with their mental well-being in this period in their lives, a unique period in all our lives. And this abuse really does hurt people. It really does. And Arsenal are not immune. We are absolutely not immune. Let's not pretend that we are perfect, because we are part of society, right? So our fans are involved in this as well. And what can you do? You know, you can only do your little thing, right? You can only do your little thing about how you behave, how you present your kids into the world, and how you teach them. I totally agree with Tim around the education side of things. I think education needs to be looked at again, because what we're driving is such diverse, extreme opinions that people are no longer having discussions and changing their opinions. And they think, well, I have a right to my opinion. Well, some of these opinions are so extreme. Some of these opinions are actually law-breaking. Some of these opinions, I have to remind you, may have some accountability. And that's what people are not getting. They just think, it's my opinion. That's okay. If your opinion actually breaks the law, not okay. If you're breaking the law, or you're allowed to break the law on a platform that reaches millions of people, that can't be right. And so you spoke about anonymity earlier on. I work in technology, trust me. You're never truly anonymous. People have addresses, have IP addresses. They have other platforms that they go onto where they are not anonymous. You can link the two. There's a way to find these people, but obviously it's quite resource intensive. So what you need to do, things up front with blocking certain words, which are law-breaking words. There are things you can do technology-wise. As we all know, if we were to post a dodgy video of a football match right now, you'd be off Twitter in a moment, in an hour. You know, so it's possible to do anything they want to when they really want to. So I do think I'm pleased with Arsenal down. I think Man United done something similar. It's just I'd expect that from our club. I think football needs to do its bit, but football can't stop what's happening in society on its own. It can only engender conversation as the world soap opera, and it needs to do that. It needs to create conversation. I know it's boring for some people. I know they don't want to talk about it anymore because they're just bored of it. But it's real. It really is real. And we need to take heed to how we're behaving towards each other, wherever the topic is. I can't stress the importance of this. And I think over the next few months, I think it's going to be even more important. Yeah, as we come out of the pandemic, it will manifest itself even more. You know, and I think it's a topic that's number one on my agenda, even more than a centre midfielder earlier, number one on my agenda.
Well, then your priorities are wrong, my friend. No, look, of course it's important. And I think, so the first thing that needs to be done is to differentiate and distinguish between people being mean to one another and genuine abuse, right? People being rude, people being unpleasant, that's not great either. Genuine abuse, racist abuse, sexist abuse, telling someone to kill themselves, wishing harm on people, threatening people, that does fall into a different class. I think there is also a problem of just survivorship bias to some extent. What I mean by that is, think about your normal day. If you're a normal, decent human being, you go about your day pre-pandemic, you bump into people, you see people at the office, you see people at school, you see people in social environments, you will literally never, not once in a month of being out in the public, probably be told to kill yourself, probably be called a racist name, probably be told to go F yourself. Those are things that just don't happen in polite society to most people most days. I'm not saying it never happens, but it's very rare. And yet on social media, it's rare to go a day without it happening at least once. And so it's very jarring because it is an exposure to being treated in a way that we were never treated before. So that's a problem. The problem also, though, is we over-index for it. Now, this is not me downplaying the severity of it, not remotely. But I'll give you an example just from my experience. If I come on this podcast and say something stupid, which is a day that ends in Y, and I go on social media and I tweet out the podcast link, let's say there are 80 replies. If 3 of the replies are, you're a moron, and 77 are, hey, good pod, enjoyed it. You know the ones I'm going to remember? I'm going to remember you're a moron. I'm going to be like, social media sucks. People are mean. My life stinks. And I'm going to be plunged into depression because I'm a sensitive guy. And I'm going to be impacted by people calling me a moron. And yet we live in a society that by and large is 90% good, decent people just trying to get through their day and 10% noisy assholes. And on social media, unfortunately, that 10% of noisy assholes can ruin it for everyone. And so we have to find a way to account for the noisy assholes in a way that doesn't sweep up the 90% of us just trying to make the best of it. Because if I really look at it numerically, you guys, I have wonderful interactions on social media. And I'm not making this all about me. I'm saying I think that's true for most people who are not overtly involved in political messaging. That's a whole other problem, unfortunately. So it is a challenge because it is a challenge of dealing with a noisy, obnoxious minority of people. A minority of people break laws. A minority of people abuse people and are violent. And as a society, that is something that we have struggled to deal with for centuries, and we continue to. You know, and I am old enough to remember when video games were destroying children. I'm not old enough to remember when rock and roll was going to destroy children, but it was. And now I'm old enough to remember when social media is going to destroy society. I do think social media is changing the way we interact, and I do think it is a challenge. And I think as a society, we have to evolve to understand how to use it responsibly. And so, you know, it is always a hard problem to not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Clearly, you should not be able to go up to a stranger on social media and racially abuse them, sexually, sexist abuse, misogynistically abuse them, wish death upon them. You shouldn't be able to do that. And it seems to me that it shouldn't be this difficult to prevent that from occurring. You know, so I hope that people can recognize at least the goodness, because there is a tendency, we see it, right? A few fans complain, oh, fans are assholes, or a few people do something bad, and then we start to believe everybody is bad. I think we're mostly, and this is maybe naive, I just feel like we are good inherently. I know when I interact with so many of you, you're good. We are good people. And I hope that we don't lose that goodness and the awareness of the volume of tremendous, wonderful, good people, because there is a noisy cluster of assholes that we have to find a way to deal with. Am I being naive? It just...
Yeah, I don't think you are. I just want to say one more thing. I wrote it in the chat just now, but I listened to the 16-minute Sky video that Vinay did, and I urge you to try and find it and watch it. And I thought he spoke brilliantly. I thought he captured exactly what he said earlier. The goodness of social media, the interaction. I mean, how many people have we all met on social media?
Each other.
We met each other. Who am I talking about here? And how many people in your lives you met on social media? How many people do you have private messages with? So many positive interactions. Even on this podcast, we get so many positive interactions where we can talk about people, certain things, help people, support people. It's fantastic. We're very fortunate. We are very fortunate. But there is the other side. And it's affecting people it's affecting everybody. But the people in high profile positions that the public feel belong to them, it's affecting them a lot more. And I think it's not all these football, they're just kids, right? They're just kids. They're 20. And I said this before, I said this months ago, and it's become more in the public eye. The Arsenal players have had this abuse. They've had to have counselling. They've had to have that. And I find that really sad. I really do. But they're not alone. It's happening all over the country. And because this is a health issue, this is seen as highly confidential, so they don't want to share it, obviously. But it's personal to individuals, their health. But this is happening, and it's just been hidden. And it really does make you sit up and think, wow. But let's focus on both sides. I agree with you. There's two sides to this story.
Yeah, and the obvious thing, Tim, to your point about how do you solve it, is let people tweet or post or say whatever they want on their account, but don't let them reply. You know what I mean? Ban replies. Ban people's right to reply to whatever the case may be, because the problem isn't that you come across nasty shit on social media. It's that people say it to you. And so, there are now features blocking and reporting and muting, but at some point, people should just lose the right to reply, because that's where the abuse happens. I think if you're famous, you can't run your own social media because you can't look at the replies. You just can't. And that is a shame, but it is a small number of people. And I do wonder if you could see the person, guys, like if you could see that the person writing that racist abuse is an 11-year-old in their parents' basement, would you have a different attitude? I mean, it doesn't make it any better. I'm not saying it's good, but like, understanding that sometimes, if it was from a troll farm, would that make you feel different? I don't know. The anonymity of it makes it so difficult to evaluate who these people are and what their real thoughts are. And, are they even real people to begin with? Very
Can I add a bit,
topic.
Elliot?
Yeah, please. Mm-hmm.
So on the believing we're mostly all good, I wouldn't go into it in big depth, but I think the problem with that is we're not, right? And I think the problem with that is that we misunderstand what's going on. People aren't all good. It's not even that there's lots of good people and lots of bad people. There's people who are very civilized, have kind of beaten all of that out of them, and they behave well in society. That's where the anonymity comes into it. But we're not all good, and we all know that within ourselves. And when we approach this thing thinking most people are good and it's only the teenagers, it's just not like that.
Just to be clear, I'm not saying we are all good. I'm saying that, and to be clear, we've all of us at one point have been kind of a jerk on social media to someone. We all have. You're just going to be. You're going to be a jerk to people. I'm talking about the number of people that would legitimately racially abuse someone or threaten to kill someone, or you know what I mean, to participate in the kinds of behavior that cross the line into
abuse. But there's a lot of them, and they're not all teens. And we all, somewhere deep in our mix, we all have something unpleasant about us. Most of us have buried it deep, civilized it, etc. And so we need to understand it's not going to be just a few, and it's not just some teenagers. We have a bit of the devil about us, and it's a problem that's deep in there, and you see it in these more as things become political and polarized. You see more of this stuff because that's where the cracks in our civilized relationship with each other. When we see the other as the problem, all of this anger comes up, and it'll be a lot of people. So maybe no big point there, but I guess I always get a little worried when we say to ourselves, most people are good, because most people are good and bad.
Yeah, no,
just
but
put them under enough pressure, or get them angry enough, and we suddenly see how close to our prehistoric ancestors we could become real quick.
I guess. I mean, I disagree, but that's fine. It's a civil disagreement. I think the overwhelming majority of human beings are overwhelmingly desire to be good, to do good, to be better.
No. But I agree. We can't sort that.
We won't solve that.
And
let me just say this, just as a point: if you're right, Paul, and the overwhelming majority of people are bad, then don't worry about fixing social media. Hide in a bunker.
You can't say I've said most people are bad. I'm saying most
everybody
people
has bad
have the devils and they're demons, and they manage them. When things are civilized and we've defined our relationships with each other, and when there's a socializing, like I'm going to use the term police, right? But police now has become politicized. But you need that third party that polices things, so that you need that triangle of people behaving from other sides, cultures, civilized, and it's policed. Because when people think it's them versus the other guys, we get uglier. And so this does need policing.
I think what made me trigger Paul is it's not just a few kids.
I don't want to whitewash it as that. I'm saying if you knew who your abuser was, if you could, I think some percentage of it is, bad actors, and some percent, I guess what would be helpful to rooting this out would be someone meaningfully studying how it's happening, where it's coming from, what the process by which it occurs is. Because once you understand that, you may understand better how to mitigate it. I think my complaint is I don't know if anybody even has a good handle on who's doing this abusing? Why are they doing it? What is the, is it understand? It would be interesting to try to understand where it's coming from so that we can understand how to mitigate it, because I think we really have a very, very shallow understanding of how social media is used and of how to perfect it. This society has to come to terms with the digital world we exist on. You have NFTs now and cryptocurrencies and social media, and we are increasingly digitizing our life. And what the pandemic has done is only taken that further. Now get-togethers are Zoom, and companies are going to go to, remote work full time. And as we become a more digital society, we're going to have to, Paul, I agree with you to this extent. Thomas Hobbes said life outside of society is nasty, brutish, and short. Well, digital society can be nasty, brutish, and short. And we're going to have to fix that. That's going to have to change. Tim, any final words since we've just sort of talked to each other outside of your involvement here?
No. I mean, it's just an enormous subject that goes way beyond football, isn't it? And there are no quick, easy answers to this.
It's so strange, right? We've built this whole civilization up on the habits and the behaviors and the psychology of what happens when you put a bunch of people together in a city, in a room, in an office, whatever it is. And now we're pulling that apart and putting it together in a digital plane. And I can tell you, I'm old enough to have been in offices when email sort of became the prevalent way of communicating. And guys, if you're old enough to remember when offices started using email, it was like social media. People in offices would email their colleague and tell them to go F themselves, because people could not behave digitally.
Only in New York.
Yeah, well, I'm telling you, I'd have people sitting 2 offices down in a law firm who would be like, go F yourself on an email. I'm like, we're in an office. How is this happening? But like, once you create anonymity and remove the, it's like road rage. You ever had road rage when you're driving your car? You don't see the car as another human being. You see it as a faceless, anonymous other. And that is, to Paul, to your point, I will say, when you start to see someone as a faceless, anonymous other, it's very easy to pour all of your anger and hatred and fears into that. That is for sure. To take that anonymous other and project onto them all the terrible things you assume they might be. Yeah, that is a thing we do. I won't disagree with that. All right, we solved that, so that's good. So now, okay, how much would you pay for Odegaard? But no, you know what? We can't go back from that. We're just gonna have to leave it there. We'll tie the conversation off there because it's now 90 minutes in, and we definitely have only complicated my feelings about social media abuse, which I want to thank Paul for now making me concerned that everybody in my life is out to get me and is terrible. Thanks for that, Paul. Got me thinking about my Hobbes again. Welcome. That political science education coming back. So anyway, I hope you guys are doing well and enjoyed this, and we'll try to get mailbags in from time to time to get to your questions. But we will have an instant reaction pod after the Liverpool game tomorrow, late at night UK time, obviously, but perfect time for those of you in other places. So we'll see how that goes, and then full podcast again on Monday, and Slavia Prague coming up. We'll try to do a live stream pre-match for that. We'll have tons of Patreon content next week. So however you choose to join us, we're just happy you're here and appreciate your abusive feedback on social media. Okay. With that having said, Paul's on Twitter at Pause My Pens. Thanks, Pause.
Woohoo!
Clive's on Twitter at Clive PFC. Thanks, Clive.
Thank you very much.
Tim's on Twitter at Roberto. Thanks, Tim.
My pleasure as always.
My name is Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter at Yankee Gunner. See, that's it. Just block me on Twitter. No abuse there. And give us 5-star review. That's always helpful if you can do that. And more than anything, we just love you and thank you for being here. And we will talk to you after Arsenal 10, Liverpool 0.